and welcome to another episode of Heart Wild Podcast. I am so thrilled today to be sitting here with Kayla Nestor. She is the founder of Wildly Kind nonprofit. I don't want to go into it too deep right now, but it is a nonprofit that is solely based off of spreading kindness, which is awesome. But before we go deep, I want to actually share with people how you and I met. I think it's a really good story. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here with you. Yeah, if I recall correctly, I'm not even sure where I was headed back from, maybe home, maybe from Colorado, because it was Thanksgiving. And I was headed home from Colorado back to Oregon, sitting at the very back of the plane, kind of bummed that I was traveling on Thanksgiving Day. And what's interesting is throughout that day of travel, I had those thoughts to myself, wow, think about the people working on this day, right? Like, I'm so bummed that I have to travel. Imagine having to be away from your family and being at work. So, that thought had already crossed my mind. And as I'm sitting on the back of the plane, we're getting ready to take off. There's this woman who I see walking down the aisle, which was you, Carrie Asby. And you were on a mission. I believe you just handed one of the flight attendants a gift or a meal or something. And I witnessed you thanking them for working on that day. And that's what I do. I love to spread kindness and positivity everywhere I go. So to witness it right in front of me, I had that immediate urge to pay it forward back to you. And just because of what I do, everywhere I go, I have little acts of kindness in my backpack. So I grabbed one out very quickly and handed it to you. I just wanted to repay you for paying them some love and kindness. And that is kind of how we connected.
Yes, and I absolutely loved it because I was actually coming home. I flew down to practice yoga with my yoga teacher. Uh,
Okay.
it's been a long time tradition. He always just puts on these wonderful and beautiful practices Thanksgiving Day. They go for 2 hours, and it is just the best way to start the day of thanks. And so I was on this yoga high, and I was just so happy. And then to have your note. And I remember I didn't have a chance to talk because I think I had to sit down, and I opened it and I remember crying
Oh,
because I was just so happy, and it just made me believe in humankind even more. Like I already was in a good space, and it just took me to another level of bliss. And then, yeah, and then that's how we connected. And
yes.
we've been teaming up ever since. It's
Yes.
just
I
doing
love
what
that.
we love to do, which is
Definitely.
so great that and here we are today.
Yes.
Yes. So before before Wildly Kind, share with us who was Kayla before August 2020?
Ooh, a loaded question. Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Eastern Colorado, very small rural community. I graduated with 9 students in my high school class. So I was a small town girl, raised with small town values. I knew all of my teachers were also very close friends of my family. It's just kind of that vibe. But I could tell from a young age that like there was so much more to the world than I was being exposed to in my town of 700 people. I just knew that some of the things that I was being taught, what I had access to learning, like that's not the full picture. I knew that at a very young age. So small town girl, went to college in 2016 in Colorado Springs, studied sociology because I wanted to study people. And, I didn't see a lot of different looking people, different types of people where I was from. They all looked just like me. So I was really intrigued by other people's stories and wanted to study that. And another part of small town living is also drinking alcohol. There's not a lot to do. So I grew up in an environment where we would party and we would drive around and have bonfires and whiskey and beer and alcohol. That was all introduced to me at a pretty young age. So I was a small town girl who started drinking socially, and I found my identity through partying. I was the small girl who could keep up with all of the guys. Like, wow, she can drink so much, she can whatever. So that's who I was before August 2020. I was the cool party girl who was just interested in the world. So went to college 2016, partied a lot. I would say I went to party school. I did a lot of that. And then found myself in my last year of college, I found myself in a pretty abusive relationship. That friends and family had kind of said, "It's time now that you go. You need to go somewhere. You need to do something different." Had to file like no trespassing order through the apartment complex that I lived in because he would show up. It was just kind of spiraling. Like I had graduated college, was working a minimum, paid job in this abusive relationship, and I just wanted more. So I'm pretty sure drunk one day, I just started applying for jobs all over the country, trying to land one somewhere, and heard back from a rehab facility, which was very ironic, in Portland, Oregon. And they said, "You have 20 days to accept the position as an entry level adolescent counselor, and we will take you in and teach you the ways, and you will essentially counsel teenagers who are struggling with addiction." And I thought, that's great for me because I'm in the party scene. So I can teach kids who want to party how to balance it, right? Like this lie I was telling myself, like I have it all under control. So moved out here to Portland, Oregon, sold everything that I owned, packed up my car. My brother drove my cat and myself out here. And yeah, basically started a new life in 2017, started working as an adolescent counselor at an inpatient facility and did that for the past 4 years, still while managing like an escalating drinking problem the whole time, right? Like was now alone. I was no longer in a relationship. I was in a city I didn't know anyone. I was by myself all the time. I had a very hard job. And I told kids all day how they shouldn't drink about their problems. And then the moment I clocked out, I went home and I was drinking about all of my problems. Um, and so I was kind of just living in that reality, trying to figure out who I was, what was I doing, but drinking every day. And so about 2000, end of 2018, I shifted jobs, but stayed in the same field, started working at a different inpatient. And I was the first responder to a suicide attempt. And that I felt very underprepared for. I did not feel like any of my education had prepared me for what I was going to see and witness in person. And that kind of spiraled the drinking. It got to a point where I was drinking at work to get through, I think, the coping and the grief of how tragic that event was. I was really fearful that every day I went back to work, I would be the first responder because we worked with a lot of kids in inpatient who had suicide ideation, addiction. It wasn't just addiction issues, it was all mental health. And they're teenagers. So it was a lot of unknown as to what I was walking into every day. And the drinking just kind of spiraled. And I started drinking at work. And the next thing I knew, I was, 27 years old, an adolescent counselor working at an inpatient facility with a full blown alcoholism. And 2020 happened, the pandemic hit. And I met who is now my fiance, the love of my life, kind of in the middle of this full blown addiction. And we moved in together. I was still hiding it from him. And about 6 months after living together, he started, kind of picking up on things. It was harder to hide the bottles. It was harder to hide the smell. I was making up excuses as to why I had to leave so I could drink in my car. Just, when you're living with someone, it's much easier to pick up on. And there was a day in 2020 when I believe I drank a fifth of vodka before like 10 a.m. And the last thing I remember is going back to the liquor store. That day, I got obliterated. I apparently called a lot of my loved ones and basically outed myself and said, "I've been drinking. I need help. I need to go to rehab." I contacted my brother and said, "I have a problem. I've tried to stop a few times." And I had actually contacted my brother about a month prior to this blackout day. He was kind of the one person that knew about it. So you can see the signs of I'm at my rock bottom. I'm starting to reach out to people, especially when I'm drunk. I'm reaching out to people. So yeah, I came back to that evening to basically all of my loved ones knowing that I was struggling with alcohol and something needed to change. And that next morning, my now fiance told me that was it. It was either alcohol or him. He said, if you continue down this path, I will no longer be with you. We'll move out. That was my moment. It was way too much to lose. Like my whole life didn't feel like enough to lose, but this person felt like enough to lose to me. And I have not touched it since that day, since he said that. So August 12th of 2020, I have not had any alcohol, and that is my sobriety date.
Damn. I
Yeah, a
never
lot.
knew that side of you. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing. We didn't talk about what we were going to talk about. And, and I can tell you've reached a good state in your life because you can share that story and it doesn't shake you up.
Yeah,
You've accepted yourself, you've forgiven yourself, and you've made that the past, and that
definitely.
past does not live in you. Excuse me, as I'm I had a little tickle in my throat, but that's not still in you because you can talk about that with so much confidence and peace that
Definitely.
you've definitely said, "That is no longer who I am."
Absolutely. I don't even recognize her, to be honest with you. I look at some photos and videos and the swelling in my face in all of those videos, and it's sad because I now look back at pictures and I think I was drunk there. I remember being drunk there. I drank there. My brother's wedding, I was in talking, just all of these things. Such a beautiful transformation that has happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you did, yeah, you transform, and so you physically, not only emotionally and spiritually and internally you transform, but yes, you also transform on the outside. You just look happier and healthier and
Thank
more
you.
diverse. Yeah. Yeah. So you said, "Okay, this is it. I am not having this lifestyle anymore." But you had to focus you had some direction. You had to focus on something.
Yep. Yeah. So quit drinking, right? That first week after no alcohol was one of the hardest weeks of my life. That I would highly suggest anyone who feels like they are deep in alcoholism when they decide to quit, if they need to seek medical help, I would suggest doing that. I did not do that. I stayed at home and I was really sick and for about a week. And when I came out of that, to be honest, I thought the first month of sobriety was going to be butterflies and rainbows. And I thought I was going to look and feel and have all of this energy. Um, and if not that, I was sure that month two would feel that way. And if not that, I would feel month three what I expected it to be progressively better. I would say the first 6 months of my sobriety was my rock bottom. I was very lost. I had no identity. Like I had mentioned, my identity was formed when I was 14 years old and I was doing like beer bongs with the older guys around me. I wasn't sure what my purpose was every day. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to drink with breakfast. Like, for the past year I'd been having shots in the morning while I was getting ready. So my entire daily routine had changed. I woke up and had to fight every hour to not go drink because I was drinking every hour. So I was pretty depressed. I kind of fell into depression in that first 6 months of sobriety. And I just kept asking myself this question and would not go away. Like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And I don't think I've ever asked myself that because I was numbed out with alcohol for so long. I've never had to ask, like, what is Kayla here for? What am I doing every day? And so, in starting to ask myself that question and going to therapy and being faced with the questions of like, what actually makes you happy? Like, what makes you feel light and happiness and those butterflies inside? And the one thing that does that is doing something kind for another person. I've always felt that way. My parents had me doing acts of kindness when I was younger. In college, I would go to the library. In my own, addiction, I would go to the library and write notes to people that said, if you're struggling with addiction, like, ask for help. You're not alone. And I would hide them in the library books. And that was just something that always had made me feel better. So in this newly found sobriety and depression, my now fiance, he's like, let's go do an act of kindness. Like, get up, let's go. We need to boost your serotonin. Let's go do something. So we went out to the grocery store, bought someone's groceries. The woman cried. She was so happy. And it was just like a light bulb for me. I was like, this is it. This is what's going to pull me out of the darkness. So I started once a week taking the money that I would spend on alcohol and I would go to the Dollar Tree and I would make just dozens and dozens of bags of hygiene items and deodorant and soaps and stuff just to keep in my car, so that anytime I came to a stop or saw someone living on the street, or even just anyone who felt like they could need it, I had something to give. And that kind of turned into once a month I'd invite friends over, and friends would make the kit so that they had some to take home. And, these acts of kindness, doing acts of service for other people, it became my new alcohol, if you will. It gave me a purpose. It gave me something else to do every day. And so if I wanted to drink or I wanted to do something, I would just go create positive notes and go on a walk and hang them up around town, just like something else for me to do. And so about a year of doing that, and it really helped my recovery started with doing the random acts of kindness. And then my fiance one day said, this is you. This is who you are. Imagine if you could make money doing this somehow, or if you could make this into a career, if you could spend 8 hours a day doing this, like that would be the dream. And I would spend hours and hours online looking for kindness jobs, anti-bullying jobs, nonprofit jobs. Nothing exists that felt like it fit for me. I'm like, why is there not a space for people to just go out and serve other people completely at random, to just pop in somewhere and do something kind for someone? And my fiance said, I will give you 1 year and I will support our household. I will pay our mortgage. And you see if you can do something with it. And I went to work. I got on the internet, was like, how do you start a nonprofit? Worked my way through the steps. And just last week, we celebrated 1 year of having tax exempt status of Wildly Kind, which is now a 501(c)(3) kindness nonprofit here in Portland that I founded.
Which is not easy, that takes a lot of work.
It did take a lot of work, yes.
So much of your everything in your life has led you up to this moment. Like, you had to have that time where your harmful habits was alcohol, and you had to have that point where you were kind of in that hypocrisy moment where you were trying to get people to not drink while you were drinking. Like, all of those were these lessons that led you up to prepare you for this path that you're on. Like,
Yeah,
and the fact that it's your heart. You literally tapped into your heart when you got rid, like when you said, when you stopped numbing yourself and you allowed yourself to actually tap into who you really are. That
yeah,
was that was your tipping point. That was your heart path, and you found it. And that path pulled you into just this whole new beautiful chapter for you.
definitely. It really did. Yes. It's interesting you say that. I also have had that thought. I've processed that a lot, that everything in my life has happened for a reason to lead me right here. If I was not in that, I used to ask myself a lot, how did I end up in this toxic abusive relationship? Only physically abusive once, but in that moment, I just was like, how, why is this happening to me? How did this happen to me? And I have processed that a lot to believe that that had purpose to get me to Oregon, to get me to meet, to take on the jobs I took on, to start the not, like it brings so much ease knowing that I experienced what I experienced because I do believe that it had to do with the path I was heading. And I've heard people say that in the past, right? I would never change anything. And I've always been like, what? You would never change anything about your life? And now I am one of those people. I wholeheartedly would never change anything that I've experienced, knowing that it has landed me where I am today.
Absolutely. And one of your messages that is so authentic, like I obviously I'm a big fan of you on social media, but it's more than kindness. Your message is about self-love.
It is.
And when you love yourself, then you can share love is basically what your whole message is. And to understand that, to have that true understanding, someone had to go, excuse my French, someone had to go through some shit.
Definitely.
And when you go through that crap and come out of it, then that's your glow, that's your shine, and
Definitely.
yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like there's a lot of people going through that shit. right now, right? Like there are a lot of people in that space. And the point of Wildly Kind is to catch the people who are coming off of work, having a hard day, dreading going to the grocery store, but they got to get their groceries. We have to do it to get home to cook dinner. We're standing in line in this mundane routine, and someone taps you on the shoulder and offers to pay for your groceries and hands you a flower. And attached to that flower is a note that says, even though it doesn't feel like it today, your existence has purpose. The way that those acts of kindness land with people, it's transformative. Like that can transform an entire person. Our interaction on the plane, I mean, it led to such a beautiful relationship and friendship where we're sitting here today. You have come and volunteered at our events, like all of those interactions, and just being bold enough to interact kindly with the strangers around you instead of just going about your day and ignoring them. It can make such an impact.
It what it does is it takes their negative thought, or it takes a thought, which could be negative, and slightly redirects it, because they might be caught up in their head. Like you said, they might be standing in line thinking of all the things and just a dark cloud over them, and then a little ray of light took them away from that dark cloud and redirected their thought just a little bit into something positive. And then from there, it just ripples out even greater. So it's just a slight little redirect, but it just ripples out into such great goodness. You are changing, you are evolving, which means our path is also evolving and changing. Have you experienced that much?
I have. I I mean, I have, just because my path originally was I was going to go to grad school and I was going to get an MSW, and I wanted to be an art therapist, and that was fully my intention. Even after I got sober, that was my intention. When Wildly Kind became an option to do something to expand this kindness, I had to make the decision a year and a half ago that I was going to turn down graduate school and I was going to take the risk of doing Wildly Kind. That decision in itself completely shifted my path, because my whole path in my mind, my family's eye, has been further education to where I can provide therapy for someone. Like that has been the life path the whole time. And Wildly Kind was a complete shift in that path. And yeah, there's like constant shifts happening every day with Wildly Kind. The people that I get to meet, I go to the grocery store and buy someone's groceries, and the next thing I know, I'm going to coffee with them to find out, they own a building in Portland that's going to host our next event. So I truly feel like my path is shifting in millions of directions every day with all of the connections I'm making here.
And the thing is, you just keep your eyes open and your heart open, and you just enjoy the ride, because
Correct. I truly believe that if I stay sober, my priority is putting goodness and light and love into the world. And I'm a good partner, I'm a good friend, I'm a good daughter, I'm a good community member, then whatever new paths open up for me, I believe they're guided. As long as I'm doing what I need to do, I believe that that path will be guided.
absolutely. I believe there's a balance. It's just a balance where you manifest, you work really hard, you do your best, you're authentic and honest, but you also have to let go and let it happen. You can't control everything. You do your best and then let it unfold as it should.
I heard this quote one time, and I'll do my best it was something about, you can't pray for the bus and then walk for the bus, because if you pray for the bus and the bus comes and you walk, that could have been your bus. But if you pray for the bus and you run for the bus and you miss the bus, then it wasn't your bus.
Mhm. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you do have to work for it, but
Yes.
accept it if it's not yours.
Yeah.
So what are as you change and as you evolve, which is beautiful, and as you're growing, so does your passion. But sometimes we get temptation, like we doubt ourselves, or we question, or we get frustrated. What do you do to help keep you checked in with your path and making sure that you stay on track?
Um, so first and foremost, I would say nature. It
Mhm.
is, I see a significant difference in my mental health, my ability to say no to temptation, my ability to say, excuse my language, but I call them the fuckets, the effets. Those thoughts in my head that say F it, like F it, I'll go do this, F it. I can control those better and say, get out of here. It's not worth it. When I'm out, when I'm spending enough time outside. So I love to go for walks. I love to go for runs. We got an electric bike. I love to go for rides on the back of the electric bike. I'm really prioritizing time in nature. And I would also say doing the work to stay sober, because Wildly Kind and my life path and all of that depends on my sobriety. It really does. I think that my path could shift very quickly if I went and picked up an alcoholic beverage tomorrow. So doing the work to stay sober is important. I went 3 years, I've gone 3 years in recovery without attending an AA meeting, which I wouldn't recommend. I worked in the field. I live with someone who's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So I kind of have a live in psychiatrist. Like, it was just a very unique situation that I have gone this long without that community, that recovery community. And I actually attended my first AA meeting 2 weeks ago. 4th of July came up and was tough for me. A lot of temptation. And 3 years in, 4th of July's in, I was shocked that it was as hard for me. I actually went to a park that day. I took myself to a park and I cried and I screamed at that park. I screamed in my car and I did whatever I had to do to stay sober. But that was the day where I was like, I need something more. I need a meeting to go to. I need to open this door. So even if I'm not going to them regularly on the days that I do need extra support, I have that door to go to. So yeah, doing the work, staying sober, getting outside, practicing those coping skills, honestly, doing something kind for someone else, like that's a coping skill for me at this point. Um, Even if it comes out of my own pocket and even if it costs no money at all, right? Like sometimes I'll just go out and challenge myself to compliment people to feel better about myself because it's a challenge for me. I also have social anxiety. Interacting with strangers is very difficult nowadays. And so sometimes I'll go out and I will just challenge myself, like, can I give out 3 compliments to strangers today that are not related to their physical appearance? And so I'll go do that. And it's kind of odd, but more often than not, I come back home feeling way better than I did when I left the house. So just following through with those coping skills that I've learned through the recovery.
That's one of what you were saying is one of my favorite things that I liked. It's a mindful practice that I like to teach. And it's when you need, let's say when you need something in your life, you feel like you need more love, you feel like you need more joy, you feel like you need more support, you feel like you need more grace, then turn around and do that for someone, because it's not like a one-sided thing. Like, if you need love and you are loving to someone, it's not like the love goes out, it's the love comes in you.
Definitely.
If you and so when you're in a low point and if you go give joy to someone, joy becomes part of you.
Definitely.
That's what you're doing. You're giving joyfulness and kindness, and you're by doing that, you're creating it within you.
Yes.
Oh, and I also love that you tap into nature, because that's when we tap into nature, that's we are from nature, and when we tap into nature, we tap into our true selves.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it
It's funny, like I had mentioned, my partner, he's a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and his number one thing is he tells most of his patients who are dealing with depression, have you been outside? When was the last time you went for a walk? Always encouraging trying nature, getting out into nature before the medication, anything else. It's just such a crucial part of our existence.
I love hearing that that's seeping into all of our veins of healing. Like, if it's all aspects of healing, as it's bringing ecotherapy into it, which is such a beautiful thing. So, what advice? Like, I noticed that when you were looking for your path, you just were asking and asking. I think you actually went out into the woods and even asked. Um, what advice do you have for someone who is looking for their life path? They know that it's out there, they just haven't connected with it yet. What advice do you have for that person?
My advice is to ask the universe for it. ask the universe, ask nature, ask God, ask whatever you believe in, like start asking those questions. I and set your intentions, right? Like work for it first. Same analogy as the bus. Like if you're looking for your life path, excuse me, you have to be doing the inner work, getting rid of the demons, doing the therapy. You have to be focusing on yourself, practicing how to love yourself. That is a practice. Most people don't just come out of society and come out of teenagehood and come out of pandemic and all that stuff loving themselves. You have to actively work towards doing that. And so again, I think if you're actively working towards being your best self, the best of your ability, and asking God or the universe or Mother Nature to guide you towards that path, your answers will come. Do what you need to do and ask a higher power for guidance, and it will come to you. I'm living proof of that.
Yeah. I was that's advice, the exact same advice I would give. Get in touch with yourself by taking care of yourself, and then just do the things that you love, and your path will present itself. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's the secret formula right there.
Seems too easy, which is why I don't think more people do it.
So who is Kayla today?
Yeah, such an interesting question. I think what's funny is when you asked me who was Kayla prior to August 2020, what I did was list a bunch of things I did, right? Like I went here and I lived here because the truth is I had no idea. I still have no idea who I was. I don't think that I ever did the self work. I never explored. I was looking from the moment I was 12 up until 28, 27, when I got sober, I was looking for external satisfaction from things. I was never doing internal work. So to answer your question, I will answer it directly as to who I am. Today, I feel like I am a very kind, very intentional person. I am someone who every person I interact with, even if they are not being kind to me, I try to leave them better than I found them. I am someone who intentionally interacts with people at the grocery store, people who bring food, service staff, every single person I interact with, I try to leave them in a better place, even if that's just a small, compliment. Today I am a good partner. I am a good daughter. I am funny. I think I've had a lot of friends tell me I'm way more funny and have way more of a personality now that I'm sober. Yeah, I'm someone who is still figuring it out. I'm still figuring it out, like who I am exactly, because I think that I was reborn 3 years ago and now I have this new heart that I get to explore. And like, what does this sober, kind heart of Kayla like? Like, what do I like to do? What do I want to? So, yeah, I would say I'm a really kind, intentional, curious person who is still on the path of figuring everything out.
It's beautiful. I love that. You're also a role model and a trailblazer.
Thank you. I feel that as well.
Absolutely. You are it. You don't have to pretend you're the real. One of your things is that because I've done this a few times, is that you will help support people if they want to do some random acts of kindness. They can reach out to you. You have different types of ways of getting involved. You and I are in Portland, Oregon area, but if someone is listening to this and is like, I want to do this, this sounds awesome. They don't have to be in the Portland area.
Correct.
I think you just actually supported someone in Uganda, even, which was just
Did.
awesome.
Yes.
So people listening to this and they're like, I want to do some random act of kindness. How can I get involved? How can they be in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can first and foremost go to our website, which is www.wildlykind.org. Go up to the contact tab and send me an email. There's an email address listed on there. All of them come directly to me, and that is how I kind of coordinate who wants to be involved. You can also go find us on Facebook at Be Wildly Kind or Instagram at BE_wildlykind. And all you have to do is send me a message. I monitor all of that stuff. But essentially, yeah, we have a volunteer program called our Tuesday Takeover Program. And essentially, we allocate a handful of the funds that we raise to cover the costs of acts of kindness happening all over the world. So if someone reaches out and says, I want to host a lemonade stand with my kids today and I want to do it all for free and we want to just give it away to the neighborhood, I would get in contact with that person. We'd have our initial conversation over the phone, give them all of the information, and then we will actually cover the costs to put on that act of kindness in the community.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would have liked me to ask that I didn't ask? Any last thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I don't think so. That was good. That covered a lot.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I've always, you and I, when we first met, we always felt connected. I enjoy being around you. I enjoy working with you, but I just have more honor and respect for you now after this conversation. So thank you so much for sharing so much.
Yes.
And, yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Be well.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.